All right, so you can see we went ahead and moved ahead in our project here. We've already completed our site layout phase of this project. We actually shot a separate video for site layout. The good news is that site layout video is this exact project. The site layout is that first stage of every project that you do. So I encourage you to go ahead and watch that video to figure out how to do the site layout for this project. I wanted to talk just a little bit about the importance of the site layout. As we referenced in that site layout video, our strings are representing the path of where our posts are going to be for this project. So what we've actually ended up doing is we have 4 batter boards here, and what we've established is our corner posts. So I know that this corner post here is going to be exactly right in this corner. Same thing with that one. For this project, we also have a girder beam. It'd be a good idea to set up another set of batter boards for this string. The only reason why we didn't for this project is our posts are right on the outside. So I don't really have any posts within the middle of this project, so didn't really need to set up a batter board. I can get all the information I need off of this particular string. The second thing I kind of wanted to mention is the importance of getting this nice and square. Off camera, we've literally checked our diagonal measurements about 4 or 5 times because this is sat overnight and we just wanted to make sure nothing's changed. So we're still perfectly square. And the reason why it's important to be square, one, your project's gonna come out nice and square, but with working with volunteers, if you can get your project nice and square, you can keep people busy a lot longer. And kind of what I mean by that is I've got our ledger board attached here. I know that this ledger board is going to be cut exactly at 7'3", and we've laid these strings off of that ledger board, so I know this ledger board dimension isn't going to change. We've took a lot of time to get these strings exactly 7'3" apart. So I can go ahead and cut my rim joist out here and get that pre-cut. I can have people attaching joist hangers to that rim joist. I can get all my layout cut. I know that these lines are exactly 8 feet apart, meaning my deck joists, I believe, are gonna be 7 foot 10.5. I went ahead and cut all my deck joists, and that could keep somebody busy. So ensuring that your lines are nice and straight, you can get a lot of work out of just a little bit of setup and keep everybody busy. So with that said, our next step here is to lay out our post holes. And I'm gonna go ahead and get all of our posts set up and talk a little bit about our post hole location. All right, so I went ahead and grabbed some of our posts here. Our posts that we're gonna be using are 4x4 treated posts. I went ahead and cut them long. Unfortunately, we're in the garage here, we're on a concrete floor, but I'm gonna talk about kind of where our post hole locations would be. I'm not gonna quite dig them out, but the concept that we really want you to understand through this is to set your posts and set them long. Don't try to cut them to final distance, because trying to get the bottom of your holes all at the same exact level plane is almost nearly impossible with working with volunteers. So the method that we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and set these posts long. The second thing is with these posts, these are all treated wood. Our posts are gonna be actually going into the ground. So all lumber that you use on any deck project should be either treated lumber or a composite material. You should never be using white wood on any portion of the deck. So basically, like I was saying, these strings are outlining where our edges of our posts are gonna be. And as I mentioned, our intersection lines here are going to be the corner of the posts. So what we can do is we can carefully put our posts in place here, and then we can kind of imagine where these holes are gonna be. A really good tip, and helpful tip I should say, is cutting out some cardboard circles. These are 9 inches in diameter. And typically what I suggest is for 4x4 posts, I like to dig a 9 to 10 inch hole. And something that you can do is cut these circles out and mark these with marking paint. And the reason why I cut them 9 inches is what you can do is trace these circles and then tell the students or the volunteers that you're working with to go ahead and dig that out. Try to stay within that circle. And once they get it down to 4 feet, which is what our project is, our project depth here is 4 feet, they can go ahead and clean up the sides and carefully remove that paint. And by the time you've removed that paint, you've got your 9 to 10 inch diameter hole. So that's really helpful. But a little bit more about actual hole placement. The biggest mistake that volunteers and anybody does whenever digging these post holes is they get that edge of that circle right on the intersection of the line. And what you actually want to do is, if we can get a close-up here. So what you want to do is you kind of want to sight straight down our line here and picture that 4x4 post being right in the center of that hole. So we have our intersection here, and you want that hole to come just a little bit past that intersection. That way you have some room to maneuver that post, and you got some leeway all the way around. Same thing on our edge holes here. We have this intermediate post. I don't have that edge lined right up to the line. I want to bring that hole back just a little bit. That way our 4x4 post is right in the center of that hole, and we have some room to maneuver that post around. So it's real important whenever you get these up. That's why these templates are so important. You can go ahead and sight down, get that hole right where you want it to be, trace the perimeter with that paint, and then you know that post hole is exactly where it should be. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set these templates up and get them right where we want it to go. We know our location, and then we can kind of see the benefit of our batter boards here in a second. I'm going to remove all of our strings, and then we'll be ready for digging out our post holes. All right, so we went ahead and spray painted all of our circles here. We got our 4 posts that we're going to be setting into the ground. I also went ahead and removed our string lines. That way we can be moving freely within our work site here and start digging these holes out. One thing that I wanted to mention with removing these string lines, again, it's really important to be cautious with your batter boards and don't put any extra force on them or don't be moving them while you take these strings off. And one tip that I want to show, if you remember from our site layout here, we had to make a few small adjustments. I have 2 nails right here, and before I took my string off, I went ahead and circled the nail that the string was on. The reason why I didn't remove this nail is I don't want to accidentally mess up my batter board. So I don't want to take a hammer and pry that out. You might accidentally jolt the layout out of square. So just go ahead and take a pencil or a Sharpie and circle the nails that the string is on before you actually take that string off. So now you can see, like I said, we have our 4 post holes dug out, and what you guys can do is then go ahead and start excavating out the post holes. For this particular project, we would be going down 4 feet. That way we can put our gravel base, a little bit of concrete for a footer, and then we can go ahead and set our post. The next thing after we kind of excavate here, this is a perfect time to get the grade or the ground ready for the actual deck building. What I kind of like to do, if you, let's say you're building on a grassy or weedy area, it's a good idea to treat the under the deck area, because otherwise the deck should theoretically kill all that grass or those weeds, but over time that grass and those weeds will still make its way up through the deck boards. And if you don't treat the ground before you actually start building, eventually you're going to have those weeds and grass growing up between your deck boards. So our deck here is a little bit low. What I typically like to do is I like to get that top layer of sod or grass or weeds off. I put down a layer of that weed felt or that landscaping felt, and then a lot of times I'll put like pea gravel or rocks down. But when you're doing that, you want to be extra careful because you are messing with the grade. We're up against the house here. You just want to make sure your final grade, after you get all those that felt and rock is still sloping away from the house. If you fail to do that and water comes to the deck, it's gonna start coming back towards the house, and you could cause some water damage in the basement if there's a basement in that house. So just be extra careful and always make sure it's sloping away from the house. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fake dig out our holes here because we're in a garage. You would actually dig out your holes, and then it would be time to go ahead and set our string lines back up, and we can start setting our post. So we're gonna go ahead and get those string lines set back up and bring our post in. All right, so we got our string lines set back up, and before we even do anything, I'm gonna go ahead and double check our square. You're probably gonna get sick of it, but you should be checking square probably 20, 30 times before this project is over. We can't emphasize enough that every time you move your lines or even touch your lines, you wanna check for square because it's gonna be super important down the road to start out with square posts. So I'm gonna go ahead and AJ, if you want to take this corner, we'll check square real quick. Alrighty. Right there? Yep. All right. We're still looking pretty square. So what we can do now that we know that we're square is we can go ahead and set our posts. If you remember, we should be going about 4 feet down here. I've pre-cut my posts to about 6 feet. If I was actually setting this in the ground, which you should be doing, this post would be about 10 feet. And what I would do is I would go ahead and drop it down into the hole, making sure that you already have your base established in the bottom of the hole here. You should have a little bit of gravel and a good 2 or 3 inches of concrete down at the bottom. And I should mention real quick here that setting posts shouldn't be done in a day. We shouldn't be excavating our holes, setting posts, and being done by the end of the day. It's a real good idea when you're planning your projects out here that maybe if you only have 4 post holes, maybe we start digging them at 1:30 in the afternoon. That way we can get them all in the right location, get that gravel packed, to get that concrete down in the bottom of the holes. And then first thing in the morning, the bottom of our holes are nice and ready to go. They're set up and that footer's set. Second thing you kind of want to watch out for when you kind of do that method is look at the weather beforehand. If it's going to be raining that night, you kind of want to try to plan a day or 2 ahead of time when that overnight period should be, because otherwise you'll come back in the morning and your post holes will all be caved in or full of water. So now that our post holes have that footer set up into it, we can go ahead and put our posts right down into the hole. And now you can kind of see that benefit of why we've offset that hole. Our post should theoretically be right in the center. And now I have some room to maneuver this post around in that hole. And what you want to do is very delicately not touch any of the strings. And you just want to kind of kick this post back and forth till you are literally just touching the string. Okay. So I am probably about a 1/16 of an inch away from the string on all sides here. And that's when you want to start bringing in a level and checking plumb. So I'll get my plumb set, and you can see that as I set plumb, I've actually moved away from this line about 1/4 of an inch. And you can just start tapping that post back to that line. Check plumb again. And tap it to the line until you get it right up to the line and your plumb, which I'm looking pretty decent there. I'm not going to get it perfect because I also have to adjust in this direction. Checking for plumb, tapping it towards the line. Okay, so I am pretty darn close right here. These levels are great. Another one that you can use is those post levels that actually strap right to the posts. And those are useful too because you can check in both directions as you're actually setting the post. And you don't have to keep going back and forth, and it straps to the post so you don't have to hold a level. So that's a useful tool too. But as you get that post right in the location that it's gonna be, you can start the process of backfilling that hole. And there's two different methods that we use at Next Step, kind of depending on either what our code is calling for or just what we're gonna be doing. We either fill the hole with wet concrete or we can just backfill the hole with dirt. Many of our projects actually call for concrete. So what you could do before you actually backfill that hole is you can run a 2x4 support down to the ground, put a stake in and nail it, and then also in the other direction, and make sure that this is nice and plumb and just barely touching the string lines. That post would then be set. It shouldn't be moving, and you can go ahead and pour your wet concrete and have that post set up overnight. You can go ahead and get all 4 of those posts set. The other method that we've also done is just dry pack this with dirt, if it's okay and the code allows for that. And if you were to dry pack the hole with dirt, what you would do is after you get that post plumbed up, you would start backfilling with dirt, and then every 6 inches or so, you would get either a 2x4 or something skinny enough to fit down around the edges of the hole, and you're gonna wanna pack that dirt around that post. And after every time you pack that dirt, you're gonna come back and check for plumb, because it's probably gonna knock it out of plumb a little bit. And then put another 6 inches of dirt. And keep continuing that process until that hole is filled up and compacted every 6 inches. So once you get all of your posts set, either filled with concrete or compacted dirt, what you would want to be able to do is actually take a step back and sight down your posts, and you should only be able to see that first post. So I'm gonna demonstrate that here in a minute. We're gonna go ahead and get all of our posts set up for this project, and we'll come right back. Okay, we got our 4 posts for this project set. As you can see, I just want to reference these post space are just for this concrete floor. You should never set posts like this. This is just for this instructional. These posts should be in the ground, set with either concrete or dirt, depending on what your plans call for. But yeah, we went ahead and got our posts set here. We made sure that they're plumb in both directions. They are just nudging that line, just touching it. So we know that they're in perfectly straight line and they fall completely square within our layout. 2 more checks that I want to do. Like I had mentioned, we want to sight down these posts. And this method really works a lot better with 3 posts, but you can still find some good information with 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first come back far enough away from these posts that I can see all my posts in a line. Again, in this scenario, I just have 2. But I'm gonna focus on that farthest post away from me and bring my line of vision all the way up to this first post, making sure my line of vision is nice and straight. And what I'm looking for is I'm making sure that all these posts are nice and straight, nice and parallel, and they're also nice and straight along my line. If you can see any post past this first post, that means you are either out of plumb or out of line in our string line here. So with just 2 posts, I mean, obviously, if we're lined up with our string line, our bases should be nice and straight. But if I can see the top of my post either way from this first post, that means one of my posts is out of plumb. So this line looks pretty good. This line looks pretty good, and I've already checked these 2 lines off camera, and those also look pretty good. So minimally, my posts are in line with each other. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're square within our layout or on our layout. This last check that we're gonna do is just to make sure that our strings were in the right position, and now our posts are in the right position. So you should be able to reference your plan. I know that this post should be exactly 8 feet from my wall sheathing here. So Azad can go ahead and go to my wall sheathing. Can you go on the outside of that? And I should be able to come in, and I am spot on to 8 foot. This is one of those scenarios, like we are getting ready to build here. You don't want to be 8 foot 16th, you don't want to be 8 foot and 1/8 inch, you want to be right on your measurement. So we're right on here. I know that from outside to outside, my post should be 7'3". So I can hook onto my post here. And I am right on 7'3". I also know that my intermediate post here, where my girder beam is going to go, should be 4'9" from my wall. I'm going to go ahead and look. Make sure my tape measure is nice and straight. I am right on 4'9" with this one. And double check this one. Right at 4'9". So I now know that my strings were square to begin with, my posts are square, and everything falls within that layout of where I want to be. So just to recap really quick with layout, you just want to reference your plans and make sure your posts are in exactly the right location that they want to be. It's not a time to be a 16th or an 1/8 inch off. You want to get it spot on, because if you pre-cut any of your material, it's not going to fit after your posts are set. So make sure that your layout is spot on at this point. If it is, the rest of your project's gonna go a lot easier.